Hey guys, Rominating Reaper here. So I've just got done watching Ballad of a Small Player on Netflix. This is the newest film from Edward Berger, director of All Quiet on the Western Front and Conclave. This is also adapted from a novel of the same name by Lawrence Osborne. Obviously, after those last couple of acclaimed films, I was really looking forward to seeing what Berger had in store next. And obviously, this looked a bit of an aesthetic departure from what we've come to expect from him. It had a very, very promising setup that looked ripe for gripping, fast paced storytelling and crushing emotional weight. Things that he has very capably delivered in his previous films. But does the film deliver on its promising setup and live up to the standard of Berger's previous offerings? Let's find out. So the film follows Lord Doyle, a gambling junkie laying low within the dazzling neon lights of Macau. Doyle very regularly plays for high stakes in the city's many casinos, clinging on to the hope of finally getting that big win. But when his past and his outstanding debts begin to finally catch up to him, Doyle soon meets Dao Ming, a kindred spirit who gives him his shot at redemption. This one goes out to all my fellow conclave heads out there. I assume you're all really looking forward to this, really excitedly awaiting, just how Berger would follow it up, hopefully deliver something just as gripping. Well, Conclave Hive, I'm sorry, it pains me to say this, but yeah, this film was really disappointing. To its credit, the film visually is a stunner, full of colour, vibrance, and contrast, really bringing the neon lit streets of Macau gorgeously to life. Every once in a while, utilizing these sweeping wide shots to, to fully allow us to soak in the beauty of it all. It's absolutely gorgeous. And there's some really cool, visual choices as well, like Dutch angles, mirror shots, slow pans, fast-paced scene transitions, really giving the whole thing a sense of energy throughout, really reminding us of just how assured a creative hand Berger really is. And that energy is matched with a score from his go-to, Volker Bertelmann, you know, utilizing similar sounds to that of the Conclave score, but unlike last week's House of Dynamite score, it isn't just a Control C, Control V job. It actually does deliver variations on that, very much in keeping with this fast-paced, high-energy vibe. Unfortunately, though, style is basically all the film has going for it, because beneath that, yeah, the story leaves quite a bit to be desired. There's a certainly simple, interesting setup here about, a gambling addict, chasing that one big win to finally make up for the sins of his past, and there's some certainly interesting ideas in here about lost souls. But the problem is, the film never truly commits to any of its ideas, setting them up and then just kind of brushing them aside before awkwardly bringing them back later, and you're just like, oh yeah, that was a thing the film is going for. And to its credit, it has interesting moments in here, sort of interesting looks at, the thrill of victory and the crushing lows of addiction. But it feels too, surface level to properly connect with. And the characterization around that is pretty one note and paper thin as well. The film tries to paper over these cracks by emphasizing its, visuals and high energy presentation, but it just comes off as, impersonal and emotionally distant and just really hard to connect to. And it's a shame because the actors are really trying their best with what they have here. Obviously, Our leading man is Colin Farrell as Doyle, and it should come as no surprise to learn that yes, he is fantastic here. Starting out really charming and charismatic, but that you see that veneer slowly slip away as he succumbs to this gambling addiction. He is an incredibly magnetic presence. Ironically, also gets probably the meatiest characterization of the whole film, so he really runs with that. We also have Fala Chen as Dao Ming, who brings a little bit of warmth as this sort of kindred spirit that Doyle bonds with, giving him that chance to break away from that cycle of his addiction. We also, in the mix, have Tilda Swinton as Cynthia, this quite eccentric looking investigator on Doyle's trail, specifically looking for a huge debt that he owes. And yeah, it should come as no surprise that Swinton does bring that quite otherworldly screen presence that we've come to expect at this point. But the problem is, for all the good work the actors are doing here, the material doesn't give them many moments to actually shine. There's not much to properly latch onto here emotionally, which rings especially true as the film barrels towards its second half, where it just kind of gets lost amongst itself. It very much gets kind of caught up in all these like dream sequences and hallucinations, and goes into these like head scratching narrative turns that just leave you going, huh? Particularly as it leans almost into like the sort of supernatural stuff. Yeah, it is bizarre and really muddles an already thin and emotionally distant narrative to begin with. It very much mistakes, being complicated with complexity and ambition. And then the film delivers these like big plot twists that it thinks are impactful and hard hitting, but just come off as hollow and unearned. And then just it builds to, of course, the Return of the King special of doing multiple like fake out endings. But by that point, I had just kind of checked out, and I just wanted it to get to the actual ending because it manages to make a fairly sprightly runtime of an hour 41 feel a lot longer than that. Yeah, a real shame all around. But, I'm hoping that that sci-fi film that Berger is working on with Austin Butler will be more of a return to form. Yeah, I've got my fingers crossed. Overall, Ballad of a Small Player has style to spare and features Colin Farrell on reliably magnetic form. But none of that is enough to overcome a muddled narrative that gets a bit too caught up in its own excess. Out of 10, Ballad of a Small Player gets a 5. So, let me know down in the comments, have you seen Ballad of a Small Player? What did you think of it? What is your favourite of Berger's films? What did you make of Colin Farrell's performance? And are you looking forward to seeing what Berger has in store next? Maybe deliver a return to form. Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.